Before the world collapses, before Tokyo turns silent and deadly, Arisu's life has already come to a standstill. He is not introduced as a chosen one, nor as a man with hidden greatness waiting to awaken. He is introduced as someone who has quietly failed at becoming what society expects. At an age when his peers are moving forward, building careers and identities, Arisu remains suspended in place, drifting between days that feel identical. He is intelligent, observant, capable of deep thought, yet none of these qualities have translated into a life he can respect. His failure is not loud or dramatic. It is slow, ordinary, and deeply human. Arisu lives under the shadow of comparison. His younger brother embodies everything he is not: disciplined, successful, admired by their father. In contrast, Arisu is seen as a disappointment, a reminder of wasted potential. Conversations at home are not dialogues but verdicts, delivered without cruelty, yet without warmth. There is no encouragement, only judgment. Over time, Arisu stops arguing back. He retreats inward, choosing virtual worlds over a reality where he feels unwanted. Video games become his refuge, not because they are meaningless, but because they offer structure, fairness, and rules that make sense. In those worlds, effort is rewarded, logic matters, and failure is temporary. In real life, none of that seems true. Outside his family, Arisu's only sense of belonging comes from his two friends, Chota and Karube. They are not heroes either. Chota is gentle, insecure, weighed down by anxiety and a need for reassurance. Karube is impulsive, physical, emotionally open in a way that often leads him into trouble. Together, the three of them form a fragile balance. They drink, talk, joke, and complain about life, not because they have solutions, but because shared frustration feels lighter than carrying it alone. Their friendship is not built on ambition or success, but on mutual recognition. Each of them sees the others as they truly are, without pretending they are more than that. Yet even within this friendship, there is an unspoken understanding that nothing is moving forward. They are surviving days, not building futures. Arisu knows this, even if he refuses to say it aloud. He is painfully aware that his intelligence is going to waste, that his ability to analyze and think deeply has no outlet. This awareness does not motivate him. It paralyzes him. The more clearly he sees his situation, the harder it becomes to act. Failure feels inevitable, so inaction becomes safer than trying. When the story begins, there is no sense of hope or transformation on the horizon. There is only routine. That is what makes the sudden disappearance of the world so unsettling. When Tokyo empties and reality fractures, it does not interrupt a meaningful life. It interrupts stagnation. The irony is cruel but precise. The moment Arisu loses everything familiar is also the moment he is finally forced to confront existence itself. The world ends not when he is ready, but when he has nothing left to lose. This is a crucial point that defines Alice in Borderland from the very beginning. Arisu is not dragged into the games because he is special. He is dragged in because he is unfinished. Borderland does not choose heroes. It exposes people. It takes individuals who are already broken, already questioning their worth, and strips away every distraction that once softened those questions. For Arisu, there are no more games to escape into, no family expectations to disappoint, no society to fail quietly within. There is only life or death, reduced to its most brutal clarity. At this stage, Arisu does not want to die, but he does not know why he should live either. That uncertainty is his true starting point. Borderland does not immediately give him purpose. Instead, it confronts him with a question he has avoided for years. What is your life worth when stripped of comfort, excuses, and comparison? The games have not begun yet, but the test already has. And unlike the world he came from, this new reality will not allow him to stand still. The transition into Borderland does not arrive with thunder or warning. There is no grand explosion, no dramatic announcement of the end of the world. Instead, it comes quietly, almost politely. One moment, Tokyo is crowded, loud, overflowing with movement. The next, it is empty. Streets stretch endlessly without footsteps. Shops glow without customers, and the air itself feels suspended. For Arisu and his friends, the absence is more terrifying than chaos could ever be. A city built for millions has been reduced to a stage with no audience, and they are the only actors left behind. At first, disbelief dominates their reactions. They shout, they run, they search for people, for signals, for any sign that reality still follows familiar rules. Mobile phones lose reception. Vehicles refuse to start. The systems that once made modern life function simply stop responding. Tokyo remains intact, but its purpose is gone. This is not destruction, it is abandonment. The silence presses down harder with every unanswered question, and slowly, panic begins to seep in. A world without people is not freedom. It is a threat. Arisu's response to this emptiness is revealing. Instead of pure fear, he feels an unsettling sense of relief. Without crowds, without authority, without judgment, the weight of expectations seems to lift for a brief moment. There is no father to disappoint, no society to fall behind. Only his friends remain, and for a fleeting second, that feels enough. This emotional contradiction is important. Borderland does not only terrify, it tempts. It removes the pressures of the old world and replaces them with something simpler, more brutal, yet strangely honest. That fragile calm does not last. Lights flicker on massive screens, arrows appear where there were none before, guiding them toward a destination that feels intentional. This is the first hint that the emptiness is not random. Someone, or something, is watching. Following the signs is not a choice born of curiosity, but of instinct. Humans are drawn to meaning, even when meaning leads them into danger. Arisu and the others follow the arrows, because standing still in a silent city feels worse than moving toward the unknown. The building they enter does not look special. It resembles countless others scattered across Tokyo. Yet the moment they step inside, the atmosphere changes. This is not an abandoned space. This is a controlled one. Smartphones line the interior, activating without input, scanning faces, assigning identities. In a world where communication has died, these devices suddenly work with unsettling precision. The message is clear. Technology has not failed. It has been repurposed. The first rule is delivered without emotion. Participation is mandatory. Refusal is not an option. The concept of a game is introduced, but it is stripped of any sense of playfulness. There are no rewards, no entertainment, no spectators, only conditions for survival. The word itself becomes distorted. A game, in Borderland, is not something you choose to play. It is something you must survive. What makes this moment powerful is how quickly reality reshapes itself. Fear escalates, but denial disappears just as fast. Arisu notices this change not only in himself, but in everyone around him. The human mind adapts with frightening speed when consequences become absolute. There is no time to question how or why this world exists. Those questions are luxuries reserved for safety. In Borderland, understanding comes second to staying alive. The presence of other players confirms the truth they have been avoiding. They are not alone, and this is not an isolated event. People from different places, different lives, have been pulled into the same space under the same rules. Borderland is not a personal nightmare. It is a system, and like all systems, it is designed, structured, and intentional. Arisu begins to sense the core difference between the world he came from and the one he now stands in. In the real world, failure was slow, abstract, and forgiving. One could fall behind and still exist. In Borderland, failure is immediate and final. There is no room for hesitation, no tolerance for indecision. This clarity is terrifying, yet it awakens something dormant within him. For the first time, his thoughts matter in a direct, measurable way. Logic is no longer academic. Observation is no longer wasted. Every conclusion carries weight. The beginning of the games marks the end of ambiguity. Life is reduced to a set of conditions, and survival becomes the only objective that cannot be ignored. Tokyo may be empty, but Borderland is not lifeless. It is watching, waiting, and testing. And as Arisu steps forward into this new reality, one truth becomes unavoidable. The world he knew is gone, and the one replacing it will not allow him to remain the person he used to be. The first game does not begin with action, but with confusion. Arisu and the others are given rules that sound deceptively simple, delivered through cold screens and emotionless announcements. A limited time. A choice between doors labeled with opposing meanings. No explanation beyond what is necessary. At this moment, the game does not yet feel real. It feels artificial, staged, almost absurd. The human mind resists accepting danger when it arrives wrapped in symbols and instructions. It takes a moment for fear to catch up to logic. That moment does not last long. When the consequences of a wrong choice are revealed, uncertainty turns into panic. The environment itself becomes hostile, not through chaos, but through precision. Nothing here is accidental. Every wall, every corridor, every restriction has been placed deliberately. The game is not designed to confuse players forever. It is designed to pressure them into making decisions before they are ready. Time becomes the true enemy, forcing instincts to override reason. In this space, Arisu's companions react in ways that feel painfully human. Some freeze, overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility. Others cling to optimism, trying to convince themselves that this is still some kind of elaborate test. There is nervous laughter, denial, arguments born not from disagreement, but from fear. The game has not harmed anyone yet, but it has already begun to divide them. Survival, even before it is tested, isolates people. Arisu stands apart not because he is fearless, but because fear pushes him inward instead of outward. While others argue or hesitate, his attention shifts to the environment. He begins to notice details that feel insignificant to everyone else. Distances, symmetry, patterns in the layout. The structure of the building itself becomes information. In the real world, this habit of observation had no reward. Here, it may be the only thing that matters. What defines this first trial is not physical danger, but mental clarity under pressure. The game does not demand strength, speed, or aggression. It demands interpretation. The labels on the doors are not instructions. They are misdirection. Borderland does not lie outright. It tells partial truths and waits to see who fills in the gaps correctly. The players who rely on intuition alone are the ones most vulnerable, because intuition is shaped by expectation, and expectation, in this world, is often wrong. Arisu's realization comes slowly, pieced together from fragments of observation. He understands that the game is not asking them to choose between hope and despair, but to recognize how the space connects. The meaning of the labels is not fixed. It depends on position, sequence, and movement. This is not luck. This is logic disguised as cruelty. The game punishes assumptions and rewards those willing to doubt what they see. As the time limit closes in, pressure escalates. The weight of responsibility becomes unbearable. Choosing wrong does not only affect oneself, it affects everyone standing nearby. This shared risk amplifies fear, turning every second into a test of trust. Arisu feels the hesitation in his body, the instinct to retreat, to avoid being the one who decides. Yet this is precisely what Borderland demands. In a world where outcomes are absolute, indecision is no longer neutral. It is a choice in itself. When Arisu finally acts, it is not with confidence, but with acceptance. He accepts that certainty is impossible, that fear cannot be eliminated, and that thinking clearly does not guarantee safety. What it offers instead is the best possible chance. His decision is rooted in structure, not belief. He trusts the logic of the space over the symbols presented to him. In doing so, he reclaims something he lost long before arriving here: agency. The outcome reshapes everything. The group survives, but survival is not celebrated. There is no relief, only shock and silence. The reality of the game settles in fully for the first time. This was not a warning. It was a demonstration. Borderland has shown them what kind of world this is, and what kind of people are likely to endure within it. For Arisu, the first trial marks a turning point that goes deeper than survival. It proves that his way of thinking has value, not in theory, not in games played for entertainment, but in the raw calculus of life and death. The intelligence that once isolated him now becomes a bridge between existence and erasure. This realization does not make him stronger emotionally, but it gives him direction. From this point forward, Arisu can no longer pretend that his life has no purpose. Borderland has assigned one to him, brutally and without consent, to observe, to think, and to choose when others cannot. The first trial does not make him a hero. It makes him responsible. And in a world like Borderland, responsibility is the heaviest burden of all. Surviving the first game does not bring freedom. It brings a countdown. When Arisu and the others receive their visas, the word itself sounds deceptively harmless, almost bureaucratic. In another world, a visa represents permission, opportunity, the right to stay. In Borderland, it represents delay, a temporary extension granted to those who have proven useful enough to remain alive a little longer. Life is no longer something one possesses by default. It is something that must be renewed. The rules surrounding the visa are simple and merciless. Each game extends it by a limited number of days. When it expires, the consequence is immediate and unavoidable. There is no appeal, no hiding, no negotiation. The system does not chase people who want to live. It waits patiently for those who hesitate. This transforms time itself into a weapon. Every sunrise is no longer a beginning, but a subtraction. Every moment of rest carries guilt, because rest does not stop the clock. What makes this mechanism so effective is not its cruelty, but its clarity. Borderland does not deceive players about the cost of survival. It places the truth directly in front of them and forces them to respond. To live, one must keep playing. To stop playing is to accept erasure. In this world, inaction becomes the most dangerous decision of all. Fear is no longer tied to immediate threats, but to the quiet passing of hours. Arisu begins to notice how this pressure reshapes people. Some players grow frantic, jumping from game to game without reflection, driven by the terror of running out of time. Others withdraw, clinging to the days they have earned, avoiding risk even as their remaining time dwindles. A few simply give up. They sit in empty streets, watching the sky, waiting for their visas to expire. Borderland does not judge them. It does not need to. The system continues whether they move or not. Witnessing this breaks something inside Arisu. Death in the games is sudden, shocking, difficult to process. But what haunts him more are those who choose not to fight anymore. These are not people defeated by a game. They are people exhausted by existence itself. Borderland exposes a truth that the real world often hides. Survival requires desire. When that desire fades, even the strongest systems cannot sustain life. The visa system also forces Arisu to confront a paradox he has never faced before. In his old life, time felt endless but meaningless. Days passed without urgency, allowing him to postpone decisions indefinitely. In Borderland, time is brutally finite, yet every second matters. This should make life feel more valuable. Instead, it makes living heavier. Knowing that life must be actively maintained turns survival into a responsibility rather than a gift. As Arisu navigates this reality, his intelligence continues to serve him, but it is no longer enough. Strategy can extend a visa, but it cannot answer the deeper question growing inside him. Why continue? What is the point of earning more days if those days are spent in fear, watching others disappear, knowing the cycle never truly ends? Borderland does not reward hope. It tests endurance. This is where the fear of living begins to outweigh the fear of dying. Living in Borderland means accepting constant loss, constant tension, constant moral compromise. Every game offers survival at a cost, often requiring players to witness suffering, make impossible choices, or carry guilt forward. The visa keeps the body alive, but it slowly erodes the spirit. Arisu realizes that continuing to live here will inevitably change him, not just as a player, but as a person. Yet, he continues, not because he has found meaning, but because stopping feels worse. Somewhere beneath the exhaustion, a fragile instinct remains. The instinct that life, even in its most reduced and painful form, still holds something worth protecting. Borderland does not allow players to romanticize survival. It demands that they justify it daily. The true cruelty of the visa system lies in how ordinary it feels after a while. The countdown becomes routine. Players begin to calculate days the way others calculate schedules. Survival becomes logistical. This normalization is dangerous. It risks turning existence into a mechanical process, stripping it of emotion and reflection. Arisu senses this and resists it, clinging to moments of thought, moments of doubt, moments of humanity. In Borderland, the visa is not merely a timer. It is a mirror. It forces players to confront how badly they want to remain in the world, even when the world offers nothing but struggle. For Arisu, this confrontation is only beginning. The games will grow harsher, the costs heavier. But before strength, before strategy, before answers, he must first face the simplest and most terrifying question of all. Not how to survive, but whether he truly wants to. As the games continue, it becomes clear that Borderland is not interested in fairness, nor in simple tests of intelligence or strength. Each new challenge feels deliberately crafted to dig deeper, moving past survival skills and into the core of human nature. The rules grow more complex, the environments more unforgiving, but the true difficulty no longer lies in escaping danger. It lies in what the games demand from the people who play them. Borderland does not merely ask whether someone can survive. It asks what they are willing to become in order to do so. Arisu begins to notice a pattern that unsettles him more than any countdown ever could. The games are designed to force interaction. Rarely can someone win alone. Cooperation becomes necessary, yet trust becomes increasingly dangerous. Every alliance is temporary, every promise fragile. In this world, kindness can be a liability, hesitation, a weakness, and empathy, a risk that may cost lives. The games exploit this tension mercilessly, placing players in situations where saving oneself may require sacrificing another, or where protecting others might ensure personal failure. What makes these trials especially cruel is that they never give clear moral answers. There is no obvious right choice, no path that preserves both survival and innocence. Borderland strips away the comfort of ethical certainty. Players are not judged by their intentions, only by outcomes. Those who hesitate for moral reasons often lose, while those who act decisively, even cruelly, tend to advance. Over time, this dynamic reshapes behavior. People begin to calculate human lives as variables, weighing risks and benefits with cold precision. Arisu struggles deeply with this shift. His intelligence allows him to understand the logic behind the games, but his conscience refuses to fully accept their implications. Each victory feels hollow, shadowed by the awareness that survival often comes at someone else's expense. He starts to understand that Borderland does not reward goodness or punish cruelty. It rewards adaptability. And adaptability, in this context, often means learning how to suppress guilt. Around him, Arisu sees players who embrace this reality completely. Some become manipulative, using fear and misinformation to control others. Some grow detached, treating death as an unavoidable inconvenience rather than a tragedy. Others mask their terror behind confidence, projecting strength to avoid becoming targets. The games do not create these traits from nothing. They amplify what already exists, accelerating personal transformations that might have taken years in the real world. What is most disturbing is how quickly this new normal settles in. Actions that would have been unthinkable before Borderland begin to feel routine. Players stop reacting emotionally to loss, not because they have grown stronger, but because feeling too much becomes unbearable. Emotional numbness becomes a survival mechanism. Humanity is not lost all at once. It erodes gradually, worn down by repetition, pressure, and fear. Arisu recognizes this erosion within himself. He still cares, still questions, still feels pain when others suffer. But he also feels something else growing alongside those emotions. Calculation, detachment, the ability to compartmentalize. He learns to focus on solutions rather than consequences, on patterns rather than people. This internal conflict becomes his greatest struggle. To survive, he must think clearly. To remain human, he must feel deeply. Borderland offers no space where both can exist comfortably. The games also reveal an uncomfortable truth about equality. In the real world, social structures create distance between people. In Borderland, those structures vanish. Age, profession, status, and background lose meaning. What remains are raw traits: strength, intelligence, resilience, and fear tolerance. This flattening exposes how unequal survival truly is. Some people are simply better suited to this environment, not because they are more deserving, but because their skills align with its cruelty. This realization shakes Arisu's understanding of justice. Borderland is not punishing the wicked or sparing the virtuous. It is filtering people based on compatibility. Those who can adapt endure. Those who cannot disappear. The games do not care why someone fails. They only record that they did. This indifference is what makes the system so horrifying. There is no higher purpose visible, no lesson clearly taught, only selection. Yet, even as humanity is stripped away, fragments of it persist. Moments of cooperation still occur. Sacrifices are still made. People still protect strangers without guarantee of reward. These moments stand out precisely because they feel out of place. They remind Arisu that humanity is not erased easily. It resists, even under extreme pressure. Borderland may be designed to break people, but it cannot fully control what they choose to value. By this stage, Arisu understands that the games are no longer just obstacles. They are mirrors, reflecting the parts of people they would rather not see. Every trial leaves behind more than survivors. It leaves behind altered individuals, carrying invisible wounds. Borderland does not simply test who lives and who dies. It tests what remains of a person after survival is secured. And for Arisu, the most frightening realization is this: staying alive may be possible. Staying human may be the real challenge. The discovery of the beach feels, at first glance, like salvation. After days defined by empty streets, fear, and relentless countdowns, the sight of light, music, and people gathered together is almost overwhelming. This place looks alive. There are conversations, laughter, food, alcohol, and color. For players worn down by isolation and constant danger, the beach presents itself as proof that order can still exist in Borderland. It promises structure, safety, and above all, meaning. Yet from the moment Arisu steps inside, it becomes clear that this paradise is carefully constructed and that its foundations are far less stable than they appear. The beach operates on a simple and seductive idea. All playing cards scattered across Borderland must be collected. Once the full deck is assembled, someone will be granted the chance to return to the real world. This belief gives people purpose. It transforms survival from a desperate scramble into a collective mission. For many, this story is enough. It turns fear into motivation and chaos into hierarchy. People accept rules willingly when those rules offer hope, even if that hope is unproven. Underneath the surface, the beach is governed by strict control. Everyone must follow regulations, surrender personal ambition, and contribute their winnings to a central authority. Individual success is discouraged. Unity is enforced. On paper, this system makes sense. It reduces conflict, prevents hoarding, and channels effort toward a shared goal. In practice, it creates dependency. The beach does not eliminate fear. It redistributes it, placing it quietly behind smiles and routines. Arisu observes this contradiction almost immediately. The atmosphere is relaxed, yet tense. People indulge in pleasure, but their eyes constantly scan their surroundings. Trust exists, but only conditionally. The rules protect players from open violence, but they also suppress dissent. Anyone who challenges the system risks becoming an outsider, And in Borderland, isolation is often a death sentence. The beach offers safety not through freedom, but through compliance. At the center of this structure stands its leader, a charismatic figure who believes deeply in the idea of collecting the cards. His conviction is genuine, and that sincerity is what makes him dangerous. He is not manipulating others for personal gain alone. He truly believes that this system will save people. This belief allows him to justify harsh measures, strict punishments, and absolute authority. In his mind, any sacrifice is acceptable if it brings them closer to the goal. Hope, when unquestioned, becomes a powerful tool of control. As Arisu becomes more involved with the beach, he begins to see the cracks beneath its polished surface. Power struggles simmer quietly. Factions form despite official unity. Fear does not disappear. It simply changes shape. Instead of fearing the games alone, people now fear each other. Fear losing status. Fear being labeled a traitor. The beach has recreated a version of the world they lost, complete with hierarchy, inequality, and quiet violence. Borderland did not need to force this structure. Humans built it themselves. What unsettles Arisu most is how comfortable people seem within this illusion. The routines, the distractions, the promise of escape, all combine to dull critical thought. The beach feels safe enough to forget that nothing here has truly changed. Death still waits beyond its walls. The games still demand sacrifice. The difference is that now, people believe their suffering has direction. They believe it is leading somewhere. This belief allows them to endure far more than they otherwise could. Yet this comfort comes at a cost. The beach discourages questioning. Doubt threatens stability, and stability is valued above truth. Arisu senses that the system's greatest weakness is also its greatest strength. It depends entirely on belief. If people stop believing in the promise of the cards, the entire structure collapses. Order, pleasure, and safety vanish. The moment hope is exposed is fragile. As he navigates this environment, Arisu faces a new kind of challenge. The games tested his mind and his morals. The beach tests his ability to see through illusions. It asks whether survival is enough if it is built on denial, whether peace has value when it requires surrendering doubt. Borderland is no longer just an external threat. It has embedded itself into human systems, wearing the disguise of civilization. The beach is not evil by design. It is tragic by nature. It represents humanity's instinct to recreate familiar structures, even in a world that has proven those structures meaningless. For Arisu, this realization is sobering. The beach is not an escape from Borderland. It is Borderland's reflection, a reminder that no matter where people gather, fear and hope will shape the same patterns again and again. And if those patterns are built on illusion, collapse is not a possibility. It is an inevitability. The collapse of the beach does not begin with chaos. It begins with suspicion. One death, one unanswered question, and the fragile balance holding the community together starts to fracture. The game announced that night is simple in its wording, yet devastating in implication. There is a culprit, a witch, and the players must identify and punish that individual to survive. No complex puzzles, no physical trials, only judgment, in a place already held together by belief and fear. This rule is enough to unravel everything. What makes this game especially dangerous is how well it aligns with the existing atmosphere of the beach. Trust has always been conditional. Alliance is fragile, authority contested beneath the surface. The witch hunt does not introduce paranoia. It weaponizes what was already there. Every glance becomes evidence. Every silence becomes suspicious. People begin to replay conversations in their minds, searching for inconsistencies that may never have existed. Logic is replaced by instinct. An instinct, when driven by fear, rarely points toward truth. Arisu quickly understands that this is not a game of deduction. It is a game of human behavior under extreme pressure. The rules offer no guidance on how to investigate, no tools to verify claims. Instead, they create a vacuum where accusation fills the void left by uncertainty. In this environment, the loudest voices gain power, not because they are correct, but because they offer certainty. And certainty, even false certainty, is comforting when time is running out. As panic spreads, order disintegrates rapidly. The rules of the beach, once enforced through structure and routine, lose their authority. The promise of collecting cards and escaping together no longer matters. Survival narrows people's focus until the only goal left is to avoid being chosen. Violence emerges not as strategy, but as desperation. People act not to win, but to delay their own condemnation. The beach transforms from a sanctuary into a battlefield of fear. The most tragic aspect of the witch hunt is how easily people abandon restraint. Actions that would have been unthinkable days earlier become justifiable in the name of survival. Accusations turn into mob behavior. Fear drowns out reason. Arisu witnesses how quickly humanity can fracture when placed under moral pressure without clear answers. The game does not force anyone to kill. It creates conditions where killing feels inevitable. In the midst of this collapse, Arisu's perspective sharpens. He realizes that the true target of the game is not the witch, but the community itself. The system is testing how quickly order dissolves when trust is removed. The beach was never meant to withstand this kind of pressure. It was built on shared belief, not verified truth. Once that belief cracks, there is nothing left to hold it together. Arisu also recognizes something deeply unsettling about the design of the game. The witch hunt does not reward intelligence, patience, or cooperation. It rewards conformity and aggression. Those who hesitate are suspected. Those who question are silenced. The safest position is not innocence, but invisibility. This realization reinforces a grim truth about Borderland. The games are not always meant to be beaten through cleverness. Sometimes, they are meant to be endured, exposing the limits of human systems rather than individual ability. As chaos escalates, leadership loses meaning. Authority figures are ignored or overpowered. Rules are rewritten in real time by whoever holds immediate influence. The beach's carefully maintained hierarchy collapses under the weight of fear. What remains is raw survival instinct, stripped of ideology or long-term vision. Arisu sees clearly now that the beach did not fail because of a single mistake. It failed because it was built on an assumption that people would act rationally when pushed to their limits. The witch hunt reaches its conclusion not with clarity, but with devastation. The truth, when it emerges, does not restore order. It only confirms how much has already been lost. Lives are gone. Trust is shattered. The illusion of paradise is reduced to ashes. The beach, once a symbol of hope, becomes a reminder of how easily hope can be manipulated and destroyed. For Arisu, this moment marks a profound shift. He no longer views Borderland as merely a place of deadly games. He sees it as a mirror held up to human society, reflecting how systems collapse when fear outweighs empathy. The witch hunt proves that survival alone does not create unity. Without trust, without shared values grounded in truth rather than belief, even the strongest communities disintegrate. As the night ends, there is no victory to celebrate. Only survivors standing among ruins, forced to confront what they have become. The collapse of the beach is not the end of Borderland's cruelty. It is a warning, a demonstration of what happens when humans seek safety without understanding the cost. And for Arisu, it solidifies a painful realization. Escaping this world will require more than intelligence or cooperation. It will require confronting the systems that turn fear into law and hope into a weapon. When the final flames die down and the chaos of the beach settles into silence, Borderland reveals its most unsettling trait. It does not end when people expect it to. There is no moment of closure, no clear reward for endurance, no confirmation that suffering has meaning. Instead, answers arrive slowly, indirectly, almost indifferently. Arisu realizes that everything he believed about the cards, the games, and the promise of escape was only a fragment of a much larger design. The playing cards were never the destination. They were the threshold. Up to this point, Borderland has presented itself as a world governed by rules that feel harsh but understandable. Play the game, earn time, survive, collect the cards, move closer to freedom. This structure gave players something to hold on to, something to measure progress by. But as the final revelations of the season surface, that structure collapses. The truth is not that the system was broken. It is that the system was never meant to save anyone. It was meant to observe them. Arisu learns that not everyone in Borderland is a player in the same sense. Some individuals operate within the games, not as participants, but as facilitators. They are neither fully free nor fully trapped. They exist in a morally gray space, following instructions under threat of the same consequences as everyone else. This revelation strips away one of the last comforting assumptions Arisu had left. Borderland is not a test created for the sake of justice or balance. It is an experiment, controlled by unseen hands, designed to push human beings into extremes and record the results. This understanding reframes everything Arisu has experienced. The games were never about identifying the strongest, the smartest, or the most deserving. They were about reactions: fear, cooperation, betrayal, sacrifice, despair. Borderland is interested in how people behave when stripped of social safety nets, when morality becomes negotiable, when time itself is weaponized. The cards were not clues to escape. They were categories, labels for different methods of pressure. The arrival of the next stage makes this reality undeniable. With the completion of the numbered cards, a new announcement echoes across the empty city. The rules change. The visas, once the core of survival anxiety, are rendered meaningless. In their place stands something far more personal and far more dangerous: the face cards. Unlike the previous games, these are not abstract systems. They are overseen by individuals, human opponents who have survived long enough to claim authority within Borderland itself. This shift is critical. Borderland is no longer hiding behind automated rules and anonymous punishments. It reveals that people, not machines, are now the gatekeepers of survival. The implication is chilling. Some players did not simply endure this world. They accepted it. They adapted so completely that they became part of the structure. This raises a question Arisu cannot ignore. If survival long enough turns people into enforcers, what does that say about the cost of staying alive here? For Arisu, the meaning of survival transforms yet again. In the beginning, he survived because he had nothing to lose. Then he survived because he learned how to think under pressure. Later, he survived to protect others, to preserve some fragment of humanity. Now, he is forced to consider a darker possibility. Survival might eventually demand surrendering one's values entirely. Borderland does not only threaten death, it threatens transformation. Yet, despite this grim revelation, something unexpected happens within Arisu. He does not fall into despair. Instead, his understanding sharpens. If Borderland is a system built on observation and manipulation, then awareness itself becomes resistance. Knowing that the games are not moral tests frees him from searching for moral validation within them. The value of life does not come from winning or losing here. It comes from choosing, again and again, not to let this world define what life is worth. As fireworks light the sky, signaling the transition into a new phase, Borderland feels almost calm. The city remains empty. The dangers remain invisible. But Arisu stands differently now. He no longer believes that answers will be handed to him through victory. He understands that meaning will not be granted by the system that created this place. If meaning exists, it must be carried by the people who refuse to become tools. The true nature of Borderland is not cruelty alone. It is indifference. It does not care who survives, only how. It does not reward virtue, only adaptability. And yet, within that indifference lies the final challenge: to live without becoming hollow, to endure without surrendering one's sense of self, to move forward even when hope is uncertain and the path ahead promises only harder truths. Season 1 does not end with escape. It ends with awareness. Arisu steps into the next stage, knowing that the worst enemy is no longer the game itself, but the slow erosion of meaning. Beyond the cards lies a deeper struggle, not for survival alone, but for the right to decide what surviving is meant to preserve.